tutti si vetri, caira batu suere matre spura, tacerenti, cutu. Perché tutte le spagliano gente, su cui amatosci, te pacutro spirato, ancora. Cucina ma sulla ieri sera, te pacutro spagnato, te tutto.
Hi, everyone. At the table, we have myself, Vox Angeles, and Andana Sananda Kamara, and we would like to welcome Sara Lachance to the Light Table Conversation. We are so happy to have you join us, Sara.
Thank you. I am extremely happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Honored.
Welcome, Sara. Welcome, Sara. I've checked out your website this morning and you've done some great work. You do some great work. It's very much in alignment with what we do. So I'm excited to receive some information about you, to learn a bit more about you and your flavor of light language.
Beautiful. Yes. And that's what we're really here to do. It's about this discovery and really putting this work out into the world in a very informative, and it's just the idea that this is our true nature. This isn't anything weird or out there in that sense. So we really want to make it more commonplace and have people understand what it truly is, so that they can take a deeper dive into that. So with that, I will ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you embark upon this path?
Well, it started when I was a child. I would see spirits, mostly at night. I could feel other people's energy. And as a child, I was scared and I really had no one else to look to. So it was something that I really pushed down. I grew up in New England, and in New England, it's very conservative and you don't really talk about it. So I pushed it down. I pushed it down for many years. I ultimately became working as a fashion designer. So I lived in Los Angeles for 20 years, working as a designer, and I eventually got burnt out. It was very toxic. There was a lot of hours. And so I turned to yoga for a little bit of peace of mind. And I eventually took a yoga certification, which is what opened me up and cracked me back open again. Something that had been closed within me for years came opening, streaming out. And that led me to all kinds of things like learning about crystals, intuitive healing, becoming a Reiki master teacher, reading the tarot, doing all of this stuff. And then there was light language. And light language came into my life in 2020. I had no idea what it was. And I was taking a course at the time about the quantum. And I remember the night I started the course, there were 3 beings in my room and they would not let me sleep. And they were asking me to write something in my journal. So I finally got up, I wrote something in my journal. And what I wrote, what they told me is that I would be adding codes to my healings, and that we all have our own sacred tone, sacred frequency, that we can share out into the universe. It ripples out into the quantum. And they told me I'd be channeling soul codes through artwork for people. And at first I was not having it. I think I closed my journal and I didn't look at it for weeks. I didn't know what light language was. I had tried to maybe look up a few things, but couldn't find anything. And so I found a couple light language healers channels that were speaking. It's like, oh, that's very interesting. I'm never going to speak. Of course, that changed. But a few weeks later, I decided to go onto my computer and start to just channel some art. And then it just started pouring out of me. And light language started pouring out of me. So it was just me speaking, me channeling it through art. And so the way I channel through art is I see codes and frequency and shapes through the soul and color. So when I'm channeling these codes for people, this artwork for somebody, it's a reflection of their essence, of their sacred tone. And so I see that through the color and through the shapes, and it tells a story and it holds information and frequency for them. And so that was kind of one of the things where I felt lost for a long time in my spiritual journey. I wasn't sure when to start a business, if I'd be stuck in fashion and where I belonged. But it wasn't until light language came in that I realized where I did belong and what my gift was. And I held it down for a very long time. I was not sure if it was real. I was not sure if I wanted it. And every time I spoke it, I thought, oh my gosh, someone's going to think I'm crazy. You know, all these things came up for me around it. So, yeah, that's my story. I really pushed through and learned to trust myself and working with my guides.
Yeah, I think trust, I think probably for both Andana and I, was one of the key elements of it, because there was that the whole idea within my head and my upbringing where I thought, well, what will people think of me? You know, when I began to do this work and, you know, and not even more so put it out into the world, not just for my own sake. And I'm curious, within the artwork and so forth that you do, how do you feel that this, what I'll call light language art, how do you feel that it interacts with people, like their physical bodies, their energetic fields? How do you feel that they respond to the art?
A lot of people, when they first see their code, their artwork, they form tears in their eyes, they're crying, they have chills, physical, they feel a knowing, an understanding. And then there's a trickle of signs and synchronicities that happen after they have their code, where things just come up or things start to fall into place. So I really feel as though it's working with their soul on that deeper level. And it's sharing aspects of who they are, of their soul and what they're meant to do in this life over time. It's not just giving them everything all at once. It's intelligent. You know what I mean? It's giving them what they need in the time that they need it.
Yeah. That's absolutely the truth. I think it's so fascinating that you mentioned that everything changed for you when light language came into the picture. You were going one way and then light language changed. Light language came and then you shifted and you knew that's what you were inclined to do. How did you know? How did you use light language? How did that light language affect you? Did you activate yourself? Did you start to receive your own activations? How did you use that to catapult yourself into knowing that was the direction for you to go?
Yeah. I think I was activated that night when those beings were in my room. That's all I can think of. And from there, it took time. It took maybe even a year for it to fully integrate within my body and my energy field. But I do feel that once I started to draw the codes, I realized I've been doing this my entire life. I'm the person that's doodling on the notebook during a class or during anything. They were all light codes and I didn't realize it. So I think the shift was when I realized that that I had been doing it my whole life, and that it was almost as though spirit was preparing me for this moment through all the years of fashion that I did. You know, I've always been a very creative person, and I was able to really put together my spirituality and my creativity and bring that into what is like a signature for me now.
Beautiful, beautiful. So many people have many definitions of light language, specific definitions of light language, what they believe light language to be. Some people think it's just codes that interact with the DNA. Some people think it's the language of the soul itself. How would you define light language?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like I'm still learning about it every day. It's so in depth that I don't know if I can fully answer that, but I think there's a lot of mystery around it still for me. But from what I do understand is I think that it's frequency based, right? I think that maybe different star systems, or maybe even the angelic realm, our higher selves, can have our own language. I think that language speaks to our soul. It clicks in with our soul. So maybe it is both. Maybe it's the soul language and the star language and the shaman's language.
Well, and I'm curious because I've asked people this before, and that when you're doing your work, you know, we activate ourselves often. We do a transmission of some sort, we receive that. How does it feel for you to receive that? How does it flow through your body, your mind? What is it that's happening with you as you are performing the work?
Hmm. If I am channeling artwork for people, oftentimes, I'm calling in what I call my team of light, and I am it's interesting because 3 hours can go by and I don't know that it has happened. I can lose sense of time, perspective, space, all of that. But I feel very tuned in when I'm channeling. I feel like I'm hearing messages about this person, about their soul, with their guides. I'm seeing guides show up through the light language, embedded in the light language. But if I'm speaking it and I'm hand mudra and speaking it, I feel like I'm pulled up, very much so. I get pulled up, and um it's just like that's the only way I can describe it, is I'm pulled up, I'm gone, you know. I'm somewhere else in a way. I'm here, but yeah.
Nice. I can relate to all of that. I feel light language in the same way. It affects me in the same way. And I so resonate with what you mentioned about the artwork, because I've found that I receive light codes. I automatic write those codes. Do you
Yes.
automatic write your codes when
Yes.
you receive
Yes.
them? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
receive them automatic written, and that's one way of receiving them. That's one way of integrating. But what happens with myself is that I go back and do artwork and increase the line weights and make it cute, ultimately make it pretty, right? But in
Yeah.
that process, somewhere in that process, that integration piece takes place, and that takes me to another level, and it actually brings out more of the spoken light language. Have you had that as your experience as well?
Interesting. I can relate to what you're saying about like the automatic writing
Yeah.
and then bringing it and making it look cute. But as I'm channeling, I don't often feel like I want to speak. I mean,
Mm,
when I'm doing the art, rather,
yeah.
I feel like that sort of takes a back seat for me.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Have you found practical applications for it? Do you use it just in your everyday state of being? Have you found ways to utilize it, whether it's connecting you with nature, connecting you with, other people, other things, just your ability to utilize it to command the field in a sense.
Yeah, I really enjoy using it in nature. I
Mm.
enjoy connecting with the trees and the land and the water. I remember taking this trip to Florida, going out into the water and putting my hands right on top of the water and speaking the light codes. And I swear, just a minute later, a dolphin would come in. And to the point where I was with my parents, and my dad would say, are you going to call the dolphins in today, Sarah? Because I know there's dolphins there, but I mean, the second I would do that, they would come around. And so it was pretty neat. Other than that, I think it's more of maybe I'm calling in protection, or if I'm doing my work, I'm sending out something, I'm calling in the guides to help me send out an email or send out, a class I want to launch. Can you help me with this energy? Can you help me? So this finds my clients, help me find my soul clients. And I feel like it's just this beautiful energy that interweaves within everything that we can do.
I can relate to that, everything that both of you are saying, and because I also do kind of the signing, I also create art, and I write. And what I find for myself is that it is almost like within this whole cosmic consciousness, there are these streams of consciousness that come in that regulate specific tasks, right? So sometimes it is just in the art, but I'm so focused, and there's that energy that is like driving you to create what it is that you're creating. And then sometimes there's another level, which I think everything that we do is multidimensional. So that if you're guided to then sing, in my case, or speak, that it's adding a whole another dimension to this. How do you feel in this work? And I think you might have touched on this a little bit, because I was curious about how the use of light language has really, from when you were in kind of the industry that you were in, how has it transformed your life personally? And how do you feel that it helps to transform the lives of others?
I feel for me personally, it goes back to that trust piece. Trust was a really, really big part of accepting light language, I want to say, into my life. And then once that fell into place, it was like I could trust myself. And one of my life lessons is trusting myself and my gifts. So that had always been kind of a thing for me. So this really took a lot of trust for me to share my artwork, to share that part of me. So I think for me, that's big, is just having that and feeling a very loving energy also from it that I can't quite put into words. But for other people, I've seen, even through other things, like if they've heard it or if I've spoken to them, like let's say I've had a session through them speaking, I've seen also tears, blocks immediately be removed. I mean, spontaneous healings. I've seen this. And just a lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion around light language, and people can't understand it when they hear it. Some people can understand it. Some people can understand what's being said, and others, they just understand it's familiar and that it's deeper than the mind. If that answers your question.
No, it does. And I think it really, what I find with light language is that you don't need to understand it, because it's understood more on the level of the soul or the heart, or even cellular levels, DNA and so forth. It's like that, the language of the soul, we could say. And a lot of people will ask, well, it feels like they can feel what I said sounds familiar, but then they're asking me what it means, and I'll have to explain that the majority of time it doesn't have a definition like we would think the English language would, because it's about frequency, it's about energy, and so forth. And it's always interesting to ask people, how others respond to the work, to the work that you're doing. Have you had, I know, so I can come from my personal experience is that, my husband, my family, they are not in the spiritual realm in any way, shape, or form, right? How has your family or partners acclimated or adjusted to your embodiment of the work? And has it changed the people around you?
Oh yes, it has changed the people around me. My family, it is just me here, but I still have my parents and brother, sister-in-law, friends. They don't really understand it, and they're not as open to it. They're not open to it. They're not open to the spiritual. So I really, um, I hold it very close to me. I hold it very sacred to my heart. I know my audience. So I share with people who are on the same, I want to say, consciousness level, or, an open consciousness that will be able to accept, I want to say. I don't know. But yeah, the family thing it is not in their realm, and that's okay. That is okay.
Yeah. I think many of us have that dynamic, and I would say for myself, what I found is that being your authentic self, the more you lean into that, the more the people that are intended to be in your space come to the table and support you in what it is that you are doing. They honor what it is that you do, because I found that in my own relationships. I'm curious about your awareness of where your light language is coming from. Like in many spiritual circles, there are channels who hold energy, say for the Arcturians or a specific group. Have you found that coming through for your from your perspective in the utilization of your light language or the channeling of your light language or even your art?
Yeah. It's interesting because when I do soul codes for people, I do feel like different star systems and different beings step forward to be a part of that. The night in my room, I felt very strongly Arcturian energy. Um, I have my team of light, which I always feel is Syrian, and there's Lyran and potentially Arcturian as well. But I oftentimes say that I'm channeling from my higher self, and it feels a lot like Syrian energy. So I felt some angelic channels also, which to me sounded completely different than the other channels that it sounded more clicky almost than the energy that I've done. But yeah, I would say mostly Syrian energy, Lyran energy.
Sounds good. I think it covers the gambit. Once you really get into things, you start to um, be a conduit. You find that you are a conduit for all of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, is what you come to
Yeah.
find out. And then one of the things I want to highlight that we kind of touched on earlier was the tendency to want to know what's being said. And really, my guides have always said, we don't speak English. My guides always come through in light language. And the rationale for that is because the human language is so limited. It's so limited, and light language or frequency itself is just so densely packed with information. You can get more through. The human mind or human language itself is so limited that it's a bottleneck for what desires to come through. So if you hold to the light language must be this, as stated in the translation, then it can't extend beyond the boundary of that. So the inability to decipher it or translate it from my perspective is a bit of an advantage, because you leave yourself more open to the full gambit of what it has the ability to do within your field or within the field itself. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I actually really love that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of, your own personal energetic field, I'm curious because I had this question from Elohim the other day, and clients have asked me this as well, because I was having a challenge and I was kind of complaining about it, and they said, it's really time for you to listen to your own transmissions. It's time for you to do like a transmission or a session for self. Right. Do you utilize, do you create artwork for yourself for any purposes of transformation or for healing? Do you use the work that you use with others, with your clients and so forth, on self?
Oh my gosh. I want to. I have one piece of artwork for myself that is my soul code, but other than that, I am just beginning to. I am actually going to create. I also study feng shui as well, so I'm going to create a piece of art that represents that's going to sit in my success area. It's going to call in my soul client. So that's my next piece of art for myself. But yeah, I could do more for myself. I often end up last.
Well, I think that what I would like to do is I think this would actually be a wonderful time, and then we can talk again afterwards, because I'd love for the audience to experience what it is that you do. And then that will maybe bring up some other things, bring forward some other questions that we might have for you, specifically geared towards experience in your work. Are you prepared to do that?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead then and pin you, and we will mute, and we will let you have the floor.
Okay. All right. So what I would do here is I would like to do an activation, if that is okay. Yes. Is it okay if I share a little bit of my artwork as well? Just, I have one piece here that is out. This is a signal. This is Sirius, channeled from the Sirius B, and this sits behind my desk, and it's helps me to connect to, my guides. So some of the other work I love to do with people is I like to bring them into their healing temple. I like to activate them, work with them in light language. But I just like to work on our hearts today. So would you be willing to close your eyes? Okay. So closing the eyes and taking a deep inhale through your nose and exhaling out your mouth. A deep inhale through your nose. Exhale out your mouth. I want you to know that you are safe today. You are safe to experience light and love. You are in a safe space. And bring your attention to your heart, feeling your chest rise and fall, feeling the beat of your heart. Beginning to breathe into your heart space, seeing a beautiful light forming in your heart. And the reason I like to go to the heart is because it's such a heart expansive modality. It's important that we have an open heart. I'm not going to walk you through any visuals. I'm just going to work with your heart chakra today. Shiroro koarariki arokoro shororo toai. Sharatiki shorokoro to shotai. Shirokuro itieni akai. Shalakaya toro shoroti. Shoroto shotai. Sarikia toroko shteri. Sorosho satya. Shinya sushu. Shitiaraka. Guru atia hikiatai. Shero serotoro wasi. Soro shaya ni akiawana kaya. Karapushi. Seriashu. Seriashu. Shmeniakia. Shia Tieshatai. Sairo. Miasia Kai. Turubai. Deraki Oeniati. Sheros. Oshia Sitia. Shotiana Kaya Isi. Shoro do I see. Shoro Ush Noro Guaenia. Yakia so doyasha. Take a deep inhale through your heart, exhale out. And these codes are for you to expand your heart, to share the colors of you and your frequency and your gifts and your essence here on earth. I saw a lot of rainbow energy, a lot of white light and sparkles. And then come back when you are ready. So that is me speaking. I don't normally speak. I'm normally through the codes and channeling. How did you guys feel about that? Oh, unmute.
I just sat in my heart and radiated, and I could just feel that radiation going out. Yeah, the waves of waves, waves.
And I could feel kind of energy that just descended down through my body, and specifically the right side of my body. But then it landed in the heart. I could feel that energy, swirling in that energy center. And just a beautiful, soft, and relaxing feeling. Yeah, almost like a warm hug type
Yeah.
of thing. A very loving caress is what I experienced. In your work, you see personal clients, you do your artwork. Do you do group work as well? And
Yes.
what does your group work entail? And what type of people do you find that are coming into your practice or coming to I don't know what you call them. I was going to say performance or whatever it is. To your classes, we'll say. What type of people are coming to your classes, and what are you actually sharing with them? What does that look like?
So I have a lot of healers that will come in. They're already healers. Maybe they've dabbled in Reiki or other things, and they've heard about light language and they want to know more about it. They're intrigued. How can they use that for themselves, or what their relationship is with light language. So in a group setting, I have a class that is designed for them to be activated in certain parts, awaken certain parts. So I take them to what is called their healing chamber. And we do this through a journey, and we journey to their personal, because I really feel that this is what my guides told me. Everyone has their own healing chamber. And so they go in and then they meet their guides and they receive a healing and activation. And so there are a series of those. There's also a past life where we go to Atlantis. It's really about getting them deeper into the mystery of their soul, bringing out the parts of them, opening up the parts of them, building that trust, developing their own, allowing them to develop their own relationship with light language, because everybody's is different, I feel. And so, I think that for people, it's for the healers that do come in, they're wanting something deeper. They're wanting to deepen their intuition, to meet their guides, to go on these journeys, to activate the lost parts of them. Because I do feel like, in a way, light language is almost like the soul retrieval, where it can just bring back the pieces of your soul. And I think through the classes, we do that. We go on these journeys, and I teach them about the quantum. I teach them about energy. I teach them about the chakras, not only in the body, but outside of the body. We talk about dimensions, we talk about all different things that my guides have shared with me.
I'm curious to know if you guide them into journeys via your artwork. Is that how you take them into a journey itself, or do you verbally kind of take them into a journey?
I verbally take them into the journey. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And we go in through the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that heart is that gateway, we go in through there. And yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I was thinking while you were talking, and you're talking about soul retrieval, and I love I love kind of that framework within the discussion about like a soul retrieval, because I always feel like there are like pieces or aspects of a person, be it physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, that can be fragmented throughout aspects of their life. And I do feel like with light language and through even performing this work or sharing this work and however you do it with people, that's really what's happening. People are becoming, they're becoming centered. They're bringing in all aspects of self and bringing that into alignment or unification. And that's kind of a beautiful way to think about that, and just helping an individual to become whole in that sense. We are whole, healthy, and complete because we're soul within this physical form. But just to really be more centered and grounded within our life, because we are the creators of our lives. And the more centered and aligned we are, then the bigger and the better and the more beautiful the creations that we are creating, not only for ourselves, but for the world as a whole. I am curious. The one thing that came up was about how to put this. Does light language come up for you just in your practical day-to-day mundane life activities? Because I'll find myself, if I'm like in a certain way or energy, like if I'm sad or so, I'm driving, all of a sudden I'll just bust out in light language, and it makes me feel better, and I'll feel this energy come in. And at very strange times, I just find myself conversing with the universe, God, just in light language. And no one's around me, but that seems to be some way that I am communing with the higher aspect of myself as well, but that there are all these non-physical beings that are there listening and responding. Do you find that happens in your life? Little light language Tylenol?
Yes, yeah, that does happen actually. Sometimes in the shower too. But it does. It'll just happen like spontaneously. And okay. It's fun. It's playful.
Well, did you have any questions, Donna?
I don't think I have any more questions. I had maybe more of a clarification, something for clarification's sake, because I've heard this many times, people to speak about fragmented aspects. And so there's the reference of it being a soul retrieval, hinting or insinuating that the soul itself is fragmented versus the perception that the awareness itself is just misperceiving itself, if that makes sense. So it's just coming from the human side versus the soul side. I'm curious to know your perspective. This is for the group itself. Curious to know your perspective. Do you lean one way or the other, or do you see it from both perspectives in a sense? Because there's a thought that says the soul itself is whole and complete, right? Yeah,
that's why I added that in. We're so whole and complete. I have studied many aspects of shamanism throughout the years, and when I heard that term about soul retrieval, it has always bothered me, because I'm like, the soul is healthy and complete. There may be aspects of this within this physical life, that I'm still trying to bring together. And for me, it's been really about digging deeper and looking at those things that aren't in alignment and bringing them in to alignment, or bringing an aspect of self as even that comes from a remembrance or something there. I don't even remember that part of myself, that type of thing.
Yes.
But in stating that the soul, is fragmented, that phrase just made me sad. It always drove me crazy to hear that. And I'd always wanted to find a better way to phrase it, a better frame of reference. How do you feel about that, Sarah?
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. I feel that the soul is kind of a space where we hold, and this is through a lot of the teachings that I've learned as well, but I feel like the soul is a space where we have a little bit of, I don't want to say duality, but there's higher levels of consciousness and lower levels of consciousness. And maybe because if the soul holds all of it, right, all of our experiences from all of our lifetimes in between all of that, I think that there's a part of us that might have that shadow and light can exist in our soul. You know what I mean? And so maybe the fractured part or the soul retrieval is just part of the trauma, maybe that lives within that soul, like the shadow aspect. And maybe that soul retrieval is just kind of bringing it into the light or bringing it into the higher level of consciousness. That would be my thought.
It's interesting. I think everybody has their own perspective, but it's just kind of interesting, kind of toying with all
Yeah.
of them, because the perspective that I've always seen is that the hand in front of the light, like the hand will cast a shadow, and those shadows represent those fragmented aspects or those misperceptions or those limiting beliefs that
Right.
we are in this incarnation to dismantle. And the dismantling of those, which is basically recalibrating yourself to truth, is what brings one back into alignment, back into a state of wholeness in respect. Yeah, in essence. Yeah.
So do you think that we can lose a part of our soul? Like if we go through something extremely traumatic, do you think a part of our soul could stay in that moment in space, like the quantum realm, until
So
we heal it and bring it back? Or
I have heard a friend kind of describe this as I forgot what she called it, but essentially that aspect of yourself splits itself off. Let's say you are in this incarnation, there's something that happens to you that's very traumatic, and that aspect of you splits itself off so that the rest of you can continue to progress in this life, can continue to evolve. But that aspect of yourself is basically essentially frozen in time, wrapped in a bubble, unable to move until you decide as a conscious being to face that trauma, face that situation that occurred, in order to reintegrate that aspect of you back into a state of wholeness. That's how I perceive that.
I've always perceived it in a similar way, because we're building a soul when we come in. Right. Spirit comes in, we're building a soul. And I feel in no way, shape, or form do we actually lose an aspect of our soul. Right. But coming from, I was a myofascial release therapist for many, many years. And we would do unwinding and so forth. And it was kind of looking at that at the fight, flight, or freeze type of aspect. And so when people have traumatic circumstances in their life, the energy of that gets stuck within the body. And the emotions of that circumstance get tied in with the energy. So that's something that you were carrying. And within the dismantling of that, these remembrances come up. The body is telling you, you've got something here you need to release so that you can create the flow in your life. You have to create the space in your life so that you can keep growing and expanding. So I think of it more as energy and locked emotions in that sense. And I think, I was speaking with a shamanic practitioner, and they're like, well, that's kind of what we mean, when we're talking about soul retrieval. And that's why I always had a challenge kind of with that term. But I think either way you look at it, all of it is perfect in that sense. However, people can define that for themselves so that they are working and able to work on whatever it is that they're needing to shift in their lives.
Yeah. That, I'll say this is where I find light language a gem, because I utilize it in that way to draw those things out. I found that you draw those blocks, or whatever term you want to use for it, those things that are held within the field, you draw those out with the light language and allow them to be released and moved. So that's one of the practical ways that I've found in utilizing light language. So it's just all fascinating how it all works ultimately.
And I've done that as well. When you feel like a restriction, you feel a density or something, when you start singing into that area, my body will start shifting, the energy will start shifting, it'll begin to lift up and out or detach. You can detach from it to let it go.
Right.
Yeah. So Sarah, let's go into our Trinity light language dialogue. Okay. And so Elohim is here, and I'm going to speak and just allow each of you to answer. So koira tas putras pikialan de tiren. Makair otros putos suire hatier ka odre montres tiria. Katud namena mokutras paera satia ora no tripia utripi not satiere tuorum.
Yurtaramatu Chandrake Amaru Tandel Shatrakai Rat Esio Rakai the Sutrama Idand Veru Tandel Shatrame Abaru de Tanda Shotrema I Sindarako Rakai Vari Tandel Shotreme Aforutendel Shotre Ad Here Rasan de Gai Sotrama Idand Rote Ashandragai Imiruk I Rusia Datanda Veris Katanda Roots Itanda Rat itanda ratinda shapreme berat usam varis atan.
Rostoroakia dairo sherawatia. Shero posho toroko diati. Sherano tua shia kush taraki. Sia shiatu ushwariti ki shiatu wasietiki. Sia robuash daya. Darabuti shenatu shoroko doati. Senakia.
Do koira posira pechanen tia tut. No koira bayera masi chioro o kopira sa nege putra spiriana nege tia de kudra sia Sara kutra michandere.
Sotragai maritonde sotragai indosa rutende a sotramai ode asando kai sotrebe orakadu si trat de o ari trande a sotreme oraki sotreanda borutende a sotremat rotende a sotreat retand o arat veratinde sotreat marasodrea verut retende sotrebeat asha.
Yashia rokoro koro toroko. Kia tia kuru dai. Shoroto. So positia. Shutos. Sotoshu. Stiazi. Si shuru poshiti. Saroshti kiana kurudu. Sharati shutu kotushtuk. Saritiani kiadorko. Sarikiatini kiatai. Shairatai.
Birikeiro to siramino to respira. And dako o respira to respichandre kiria to shotro suandre pireston. Thank you, Andona. And thank you, Sarah. Kotraspiriyacho ashe. Beautiful. How did that feel, Sarah? Have you done that before?
I've never done that. That was really nice.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed
It's
that.
always beautiful. I always feel this amplification of the energies we do a collaborative dialogue. Yeah.
And it's interesting too because I could see energy weaving, even though we're kind of going in that Trinity. I could see the energy of the conversation weaving together. And then even with you, Sarah, it was like all of a sudden you were tapping into it each time it came around to you and coming through. So very beautiful. So we're almost to the time of closing, and I wanted to ask you first, do you have just a statement of wisdom that you would like to share with our listeners or audience to kind of help them move forward in their life?
Are they moving forward on a spiritual path? Are they moving forward in a business, or just
moving forward in more of a sense of wholeness of who they are?
Find joy in the unraveling of who you are. Find joy in the journey back to your authentic self. And the little things, they matter. They really do. Don't forget about nature, because she's a wonderful healer. And just trust yourself, even if nobody else does. Trust your path, and trust that your path might look different than others, and that's okay. But just keep following it and keep walking towards your authentic self.
Beautiful. I think what came out of this whole conversation really is something that has always been in my life, that the angels have always kept telling me, Phyllis, trust, Phyllis, trust. And it wasn't just in trusting myself, it was trusting Elohim, angels. It was trusting those who were working as and through me. Because without the trust in any of this work and the growth, the spiritual evolution, it's a very difficult process if you don't have that trust. So what is the best way for our audience to connect with you for, further information and offerings that you might have?
Yes, you can check out my website at saraofthelight.com. I'm also on Instagram at saraofthelight.com. You can find many ways to book with me through there, or you can email me directly at saraofthelight@gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Sarah, and I'll let and Donna say her goodbyes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Phyllis nailed it. Trust is the biggest thing, because as you trust, that channel widens. As you trust, as you lean into it, the channel widens, and you get stronger and stronger energies, stronger and stronger pulsations, stronger and stronger bead into what is coming through, and your confidence builds in that way.
I just love seeing the streams of energy come from up your hands. Enamored watching like this iridescent light come from behind all of your hands.
Well, in closing, we would love to say thank you and express our gratitude to our audience today. And so until next time, we will see you then.
Tu se pedre, caira batu suere matre spura, tacerente, Pirica tutte le spagna na gente, su cui amato siamo, tempa contro spirito, ancora. Continua ma sulla ieri sera.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.